Max Verstappen is the winner of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. This is the 5th victory for the reigning champion this season, and it is the toughest one yet. At the finish line, he was only 0.7 seconds ahead of Lando Norris and was at risk of losing a second consecutive Grand Prix. But what caused this outcome? Was it Max's mistakes or Lando's brilliant performance? Let's find out. The start of the race turned out as most expected. Max Verstappen maintained his pole position and gradually began to pull away from the chasers. After the first stint of the race, which both he and Lando completed on medium tires, Max had pulled ahead by 6 seconds. After the pit stop, the situation remained unchanged, with the Dutchman confidently holding his lead over Lando, who seemed more concerned about defending his position from Charles Leclerc, who was in third. But about 20 laps before the end of the race, the situation changed dramatically. Lando began to steadily catch up with Max, who started experiencing tire issues. As Verstappen himself said, "It was just like driving on ice, really snappy, and you can feel when the tires are not gripping up anymore." But why was Lando able to avoid tire problems and preserve them until the end of the Grand Prix? The secret lies in how he managed the initial laps on his set of hard tires. One of the characteristics of modern Formula One tires is that their performance largely depends on how they are managed during the first laps. Showing high speed from the very beginning can negatively affect their temperature and subsequent degradation level. However, if you gradually load them as Norris did, the tires can achieve better performance and experience less degradation. According to McLaren team principal Andrea Stella, tire temperature was the main factor that caused them to lag behind Red Bull in the first stint of the race and allowed them to catch up at the end. The main factor was the temperature in which you could get your tires to operate. It looked that if you took your tires to too high a temperature, then the drop was quite significant. It wasn't a plateau, but there was a little bit of a cliff, and you would lose quite a lot of performance. For us, the tires at the start of the race in the first stint were too hot, and we were losing ground to Verstappen. But in the second stint, especially Lando, he managed to control the pace while the tires were newer, and the newer they are, the easier they get hotter in a way. So he was very patient not overcooking it, and this paid off at the end. Red Bull's poorer performance on hard tires might be due to the fact that during practice they didn't gather enough information about the hard tires over long runs because they were focused on finding the car's balance. In contrast, Lando had more information about the tires and knew how to manage them, but getting the tires into the correct operating window proved to be a challenging task, as the Briton admitted. "I wasn't comfortable as soon as I came out on the hard tire. I quite quickly asked, where am I struggling? And they're like, oh, they're just pushing more than you. But I was asking because I just felt slow, and I didn't feel like I could push a lot more. So as soon as I started to push, I felt like I'd oversteer, I'd understeer, lock tires. It was just, the tires were not in a good window. And I think it's clear, with Max saying a similar thing, that as soon as they're not in the right window, you can't push. I basically changed all my switches on the steering wheel to try and help the rear tires and try to kill the fronts, because I just had too much front at that point. And maybe 5-10 laps later, things started to come back to me. So making all these changes and changing the differential and the brake balance and all of those things really allowed me to kind of bring the tires back into a good window. As soon as I got there, I felt confident enough to push. And as soon as I felt like I could push, it kind of spiraled in the right direction." Norris faced additional difficulties because the team expected the weather to be much cooler than it turned out to be, and the car's setup was more suited for cooler conditions. This meant it took him longer to find the right approach to working with the tires, which possibly cost him the victory. Nonetheless, both Norris and McLaren remained pleased with their performance. During the segments of the race when they were able to maximize tire performance, their pace was very high, which is a good sign. The 0.7 second gap to Max at the finish is proof of the tremendous progress McLaren has made over the past 2 years and shows that Red Bull is not unreachable. It seems that Lando Norris's second victory might not take as long as the first, and it could happen very soon.